last night's win for the Chicago Bulls saw them have a very interesting back and forth chess match with Ime Udoka in pick and roll play. And we saw between Coby White and Zach LaVine, those two alternating positions within that action. Nonetheless, the action was one that consistently compromised the Houston Rockets, ultimately seeing them make multiple adjustments to their scheme and coverage of that specific action, especially when those two players were involved in it, along with Nikola Vucevic. So I just wanted to kind of dive into this specific pick and roll context for the Bulls and how it compromised the Rockets, how the Rockets adjusted, and ultimately how the Bulls were still able to find results. As we see with that still frame, we're getting into speaking to the shallow cuts within the Chicago Bulls spread pick and roll attack. All right, so the first play here, if you're picking up, as you can see in the fourth quarter, with 6:55 left on the game clock. We're going to see this is a window where the Bulls were going exclusively to this specific action within their half-court sets. And it was fun for multiple reasons. So I'm going to slow this first one down and just kind of break it down a little bit more just to show what's going on, and then we'll kind of speed up the process with it as we keep going forward. So we're going to see Zach LaVine, as Coby White is bringing the ball up the floor, essentially split the difference between Nikola Vucevic and his man Alfred Sengun. So typically in spread pick and roll, if Zach LaVine was to space around where Ayo Dosunmu is right now, around the free throw line extended area on the wing, Coby White will be driving into heavy nail help, and the Houston Rockets are one of the heaviest nail help teams in the NBA, meaning that if you're coming from the side where Coby is and Zach LaVine is spaced around where the United Center sign is, or maybe a little bit closer to the three-point line, his man, Jalen Green, is going to be sitting around the nail area of the floor where Sengun is, and he's going to be able to give support and help to the pick-and-roll attack that Nikola Vucevic and Coby White are trying to get into. What's unique about these shallow cuts is that for the Bulls, they get into it rather consistently, and what they're doing is they're opening up that space. So this is manipulation of space from the Bulls within their pick and roll attack. And it's astute and it's smart because it is what the name is, and it's manipulating space. It's opening up that space right here to where Coby White would not be able to get this throw ahead dribble in when he comes off of the screen from Vucevic and be so free with the ball if there's an extra defender that's involved in this organic 2 versus 2 action that they're trying to get into in pick and roll. Because of the shallow cut that they're using, where LaVine is essentially emptying that side that Coby White is going towards and replacing in relocation on the backside of that action. If he doesn't do that, Coby White can't come off so freely, and the process within the pick and roll becomes a lot different with that extra defender there. But because the extra defender is being removed by movement from the Bulls, Coby White is able to come off free. After a good screen from Vooch, he's able to engage Sengun just enough as he turns the corner to get Sengun a toe and eventually cross over the line from playing in between Coby White and Vucevic to ultimately committing to Coby, getting a reaction out of him, and then he hits him on the pocket pass, and Vooch is able to finish with creativity at the basket. All right, so same play here, same personnel, same positioning from those three as well, and we're going to see a bit of the same result. So we see Zach this time engaged a little bit more with Sengun than he did on the first rep. Nonetheless, he's going to hit the shallow cut. Coby's going to come off. Because Zach crosses the help line and then relocates, he's able to remove that nail help. Coby's able to come off, engage Sengun, and it's going to be rinse and repeat again, this time with Vucevic finishing with a soft touch on a short roll with the floater. And then we're going to see, again, yet another rep, seeing the exact same thing. And this is just really displaying Coby White's growth as a playmaker, specifically in the pick and roll context. He's using his pace, changing speeds, engaging the big man, and doing an earnest job in doing so before making the next decision, and also allowing the defense to dictate to him what pass he's going to ultimately make. And he's playing with a solid process in terms of his read and react. So here we're going to see him coming off of that screen again. And like I mentioned, he's playing to the defense and just reacting to what they're giving him in terms of coverage. He's allowing for the defense to tell him what he needs to do with his decision-making and his processing. So we saw on these first 3 reps that it was Sengun in a drop around the free throw line, if not a step below the free throw line as Coby came off. So he was able to come off pretty much free off of the screen from Vooch and able to turn the corner and get downhill. Ime Udoka now switching up the scheme against the Bulls and specifically against Coby White, speaking to the different types of defenses that he's seeing on the fly now, is now going to see a hedge. And we see Sengun as Coby White is bringing the ball across half court. The difference between the last reps and this rep, the indicator for Coby White is that Sengun now has his hands on Nikola Vucevic's back. That's typically an indicator that there's going to be some type of activity at the level of the screen from an opposing big man. For a guard, Coby picks up on that cue early as he's bringing the ball to the floor, and he's starting to process already what's going to be available for him. So as he doesn't earn his job and using the screen from Nikola Vucevic first, look at how he changes pace and then changes direction as he gets into the split. These are just the many growths of Coby White in his processing, not just with his speed and his quickness, but also mentally, how he's processing the game and how he's feeling the game out. See Sengun go from up to touch to hedging out with 4 or 5 steps, and then he's able to just steal back the leverage with a great counter punch, some sleight of hand, and then as he splits and gets downhill, he's been one of the best drivers in the NBA this season, and especially since that mid-November stretch where he started getting going scoring-wise and Zach LaVine left the lineup. And in addition to that, not just his drives, but his ability to finish as a guard. It's been fluctuating a little bit, but it's been more highs than lows with that for him, and that's just the continued skill growth and developments of his game being put out on display in crunch time in the game that the Bulls needed. And we're going to see them getting back into the same action again, shallow cut, and you can already see at the still frame the difference between the first couple of reps and the last two now is going to be Sengun being up to touch on Vucevic. Again, indicator for Coby White. They're going to be activity at the level of the screen from the defense. This time it's more of a flat hedge than it is Sengun hedging out, trying to keep him from turning the corner. Stays flat this time, but guess what? This is Coby White's processing again on full display here. He's able to steal the leverage from Sengun, realizing that he's not going to be able to split this time, not being preemptive with his decision making, but generally and genuinely reading and reacting in real time. Decides to steal the leverage instead of trying to split, which wouldn't have worked because of it being a flat hedge this time. Able to turn a corner, and then look at his vision now. He's able to get up, and again, like I mentioned, he's just allowing for the defense to let him know what he needs to do as a decision maker. And he's able to hit Zach LaVine as he relocates above the break. And this is a shot that Zach has to take, and he's still getting his game rhythm back in many respects. So you can understand how his process isn't typically what it would be, which would be for him to let this thing fly with zero hesitation. Nonetheless, he doesn't, but you can see the shot quality that should stem from this if Zach takes this shot. Coby draws 2 to the ball, strings out that 2 to the ball, turns the corner and threatens it, as well as shifts the defense behind that, and is able to hit Zach LaVine on the money with this pass. And Zach should be shooting that. He doesn't. The Bulls end up retaining possession. But again, you can see the shot quality stemming from Coby White initiating the pick and roll and the general process coming from it for the Bulls. And then here, now we're going to see ATO. This is the Bulls getting back into the same action, but notice the personnel switch. So now they got Zach LaVine initiating the pick and roll, and it's going to be Coby White hitting the shallow cut. And we're also going to see with Zach LaVine having the ball, like I mentioned in the last couple of reps with Coby, Sengun is now up to touch on the level of the screen, and ultimately he's going to be hedging out with a more aggressive hedge this time. It's not the flat hedge that we saw in the last rep. This time it's a lot more of the aggressive hedge that we saw in the first rep with him at the level of the screen with Coby White. Zach LaVine, not unlike Coby, finds a way to gain leverage and turn the corner. Does a great job on the skip back to Coby after the shallow cut. And then they're going to play +1 on the pass. And this is great process from the Bulls. It's not going to be a make from Alex Caruso. It's a shot they need him to make. But again, you can see the shot quality that they're generating from this specific alignment and manipulation of space in pick and roll. And this is where things started to get fun, as during a free throw from Sengun in overtime, we're going to see Ime Udoka explicitly and specifically speaking with his coaching staff on how to guard that specific action. It was that compromising and that hard for them to just figure out. It was like a Rubik's Cube was thrown at them. And this is the chess and the game within the game that I was speaking to in the opening, that the Bulls were putting forth on the Rockets, And it was just kind of fun to see how the Rockets were trying to figure out how to guard this and get stops. and figure out what coverage and what personnel groupings that they needed to put together to string together some stops into action. And it's just fun to see this as we kind of still frame it here. Seeing Udoka speak with his coaching staff about it. Ultimately, as you can kind of see here, there's a triangle here in the middle third of the floor. And that's essentially what his defense is going to be setting up. They're going to have Sengun back in the drop again. He's going to have his two guards flanked around lane line extended around the three-point line. And you're going to see them relay that message as they confirm what they want to do coverage and scheme-wise to Fred VanVleet before they get into this next possession. So you see the miss. Anticipating that the Bulls are getting back into the exact same action again. We're going to see them do just that. And look at the setup from the Houston Rockets. So we got Sengun back in drop coverage like he was initially, but specifically in a spot that's not as deep as his initial drop was. He's splitting the difference between where the three-point line is and where his initial drop was around the free throw line. Also, in addition to that, look at where Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green are. Fred VanVleet is on the ball. He's around lane line extended at the three-point line, and Jalen Green is doing the same on the opposite side of the floor from him. So they're essentially going to be passing the baton off to each other so that the guard that's on the ball right now doesn't have to navigate that screen, and then the guard that's on the other side can be directional and keeping Coby White to his left hand. So as we see the shallow cut from Zach LaVine, we see them passing the baton off to each other at the top of the key, with Coby White being taken on from Jalen Green by Fred VanVleet, and vice versa as Fred VanVleet takes over for Zach LaVine on the shallow cut. And now we get the Bulls getting into pick and roll. Vucevic has to flip the angle because there's no one to screen there, as we see the switch at the high side from the Rockets. And now Sengun steps up closer to the level of the screen to take away some of that driving angle and cushion from Coby White. He's able to hit Vuce on a short roll, but the short roll is going to end up being missed. But it's just fun to see this process playing out for the Bulls, them dictate to opposing teams with this specific action, something that I've been kind of speaking to over since the early portion of the season. They've been kind of using this little shallow cut, and they've been getting good results out of it. And it was just fun to see the chess back and forth between them and the Rockets in this game. And then lastly, to close things out, we're going to talk about the final play. So they ran their angle pop play a few times earlier in the game and got solid shot quality, scored a couple of times from it, and they got back into it for the ultimate game-deciding basket from Coby White. And this play specifically is speaking to how Coby White and Zach LaVine can coexist. I know there's been a lot of discourse about that specifically, and this is, if there's any more clear indicator, it's going to be this play, where these two can be interchangeable with one on the ball and the other spacing on the backside. Typically, especially with how Coby White's been playing over the last 2 months now, the way defenses have shifted and how they guard him, he's seeing a lot more activity from help defenders than he was seeing prior. So you could imagine him in the same position as Zach LaVine, and he's likely going to get the same type of defense as we saw with the shallow cut pick and roll plays that we broke down in this breakdown earlier. So we see Zach LaVine come off of an angle pick from Vucevic, who's going to pop and then ultimately end up rolling a little bit. And then we're going to see the Bulls do a great job with their spacing behind that. We're going to ignore the fact that Zach LaVine got away with a very obvious travel 2 times here. Nonetheless, he's able to engage Sengun, keep control of the ball, keep possession of it, and he's able to make a solid pass out of it on a spray to DeRozan. And look who's spaced on the second side. Because of the attention drawn from Zach LaVine at the inception of it, and aided by the roll from Nikola Vucevic, that's ultimately going to pull the low man in just enough to hold him before he can make his rotation out to Coby. As we see the spray pass from LaVine to DeRozan, now we see the low man from the Rockets being forced to play 2 here. He can't fully commit to the paint, and he can't fully commit to Coby White. And DeRozan does a great job connecting from that spray pass to the second side and setting it up with that no look just enough to get the defender at the low position to shift into the paint. He gambles on that. Coby White's wide open for 3, knocks that down. Bulls end up winning this game.